Engines are failing, I chittered, my claws moving over the controls in a desperate attempt to divert power. It was futile. Our fighter had taken too many hits. Linnea, my human pilot, had done a very impressive job of keeping us alive. There was only so much one could do when plasma arcs, particle beams, tungsten rods, and an electric array of missiles were being distributed so freely.
"Let him fail, Traggeth!"
she shouted back, pointing the nose of the fighter towards the planet the engagement surrounded. The humans called it Proxima Centauri. According to records, it was a failed attempt at early human interplanetary settlement. It was the graveyard to a dozen seed ships. Now, it was the staging ground for a massive battle between the United Coalition Human Front and the Alfheim. "Rerouting power to inertial dampeners," I reported, letting the engines die their quiet death in the vacuum. Hopefully, we wouldn't be joining them. A hope I felt less and less secure in as the thick atmosphere of the planet buffeted our damned ship. The wings began to smolder, fires catching inside the battle scars, now that they had oxygen to burn and heat from re-entry to sustain them. Even with our chariot ablaze, Linnea forced the space fighter turned glider to keep its nose up, braking our speed. Against all odds, it looked like she was actually going to get this hole-ridden bucket of titanium and prayers to the ground. Then, a few more holes appeared, as an Alfheim sickle joined in pursuit. The single-person attack craft glowed brilliant, opalescent white, like the monstrous creature who piloted it. A corona of heat marked the point tips of the crescent-shaped fighter, striking out with concentrated laser fire.
"Fucking ass-fuck son of a bitch!"
Linnea growled through her teeth, struggling with the stick. I understood that for the order it was. The Coalition put us together, pilot and technician, ahead of this attack. Since then, we had spent more time in this cockpit than in our beds, which was a lot harder on me. Humans, apparently, don't need sleep so long, as they have stim drugs. In our time teamed up, I'd learned what I call human cursive, despite the sleep deprivation. That particular string meant, get the weapons ready. The trip through the atmosphere got a lot bumpier, as what little power our cracked and bleeding reactor could provide was pushed to the guns.
"It's about to fire!"
I called, reading the buildup of energy from the sickle ship riding in our thermal wake.
"Eat death, bitch!"
came more cursive, and I clamped my claws down as hard as possible on the controls. Linnea pulled hard on the stick, and the ship spun in place. A pair of incandescent light beams flashed past from our pursuer. For the space of a heartbeat, our two ships faced each other. In that time, our lance projector spewed super heat arcs that bit hungrily into the sickle at our backs. Lightning gouged a line across the length of the Alfheim vessel, scarring it black against the too-white hull. Fire blossomed. It peeled away. I didn't see anything more, as our fighter began to spin. Linnea tried to correct it, but it was a losing battle. Bits of metal flung off from our spiraling wreck, and I doubted our rudders were up to the task of righting us. Instead, I crawled along the inside of the cockpit, my dozen legs barely strong enough as the inertia set to plaster me against the wall. Linnea reached out, grabbing my claw and pulling me into her lap. Hunkered down, I was almost the size of her torso. She held me close and pulled the eject lever. A dizzying tumble met us, seeing the stark bone-white desert below and the blue-green sky above. Streaks of fire and light marred the view, more than just our vessel burning up in the atmosphere. Craters pocked the flat expanse that stretched across the horizon, broken up only by the towering mountains, spaced at near-perfect intervals. We went end over end, screaming into the roar of the wind passing us by. Then, we landed. I blinked my eye stalks as I came to, pain radiating as a dull ache throughout my carapace. Since I wasn't dead, probably, I made a guess at what happened. The crash phone deployed as expected and boiled off our impact energy as a massive gooey cushion. From there, Linnea likely pulled my unconscious shell from the landing site. I'd passed out during all the training runs too, but I'd never woken up in a cave. It was surprisingly well lit, the bone-white stone roughly carved out instead of naturally eroded. That gave my waking mind pause. Linnea was a very strong, very determined sapient. I'd once seen her play and win a game of punch face with a 300-pound gorilla of a human, as was apparently tradition. The contest was over a beer. Even knowing that, I doubted she would decide to dig a cave into the side of a mountain for shelter.
"Human!"
came an unfamiliar clicking voice.
"Your servant is rousing."
"Dragon isn't my servant," Linnea grunted out. I glanced up to find her hauling on a rope and pulley system. It was set at the mouth of what I now saw was a very wide, very spacious cave. Old survival gear, ship hull fragments, ropes, papers, and stranger items were built into the place. It looked like a patchwork apartment, large enough for a whole brood to live comfortably. At the middle of the space, in a small indentation filled with, frankly, disgusting water, was a cartholite. He seemed ancient, with a lumpy, malformed carapace that grinded as he moved. Even the signature overhanging tail of his people drooped oddly, the pointed tip worn down to a useless nub.
"Greetings, serf of the mighty Linnea,"
the cartholite proclaimed, raising its claws as excitedly as the geriatric scorpion could manage. He clacked out of the water, algae and carapace, bugs falling from his body as he hauled his bulk over. I cringed back, not eager to be within a meter of this squalid weirdo.
"My name is Kratza, technician from the... No, wait. She's dead."
He stopped, looking around as if his identity might be found laying about.
"Grotho. I am a Bracthor. No, I am a Cartholite."
His tail came down into view for him to confirm his species.
"Ah, God kick. That was the only Cartholite on the expedition. That must be me."
"Professor?" Linnea said, tying off the rope, seeming more exasperated than tired. "You're freaking my friend out. Maybe back off for a minute," she asked, moving to interpose herself.
"Of course, mighty Linnea. It is my honor to serve a venerated human."
Scathkick, I assumed, returned to his disgusting pool, snipping up some of the carapace bugs to nibble on as he did so. I gagged at the revolting act.
"Oh, shush. Nothing can go to waste on Proxima Centauri."
He chided, as though that were some sacred law. What the actual glark is going on? I whispered to Linnea, keeping a couple of eyes on the wallowing scorpion. "We landed. The impact system did its job." She sat down next to me, having to hunch slightly to fit into the dugout alcove I'd been resting in. "The professor there came out to investigate, since we splashed down at the base of the nearest mountain. That's where we are right now, a cave he carved out in the cliff face." "What about the Alfheim?" I asked, hoping we'd killed the damnable thing. "Don't know." She shrugged, glancing out at the cave entrance. "Hard to imagine they don't have systems like ours to survive. Hopefully, that plasma arc cooked it alive. If not, that Alfheim is probably skulking around here somewhere." The concern in her voice told me what outcome she thought was most likely. "Okay," I sighed. "So, what do we do next?" I asked, the training kicking in. A big part of me just wanted to ask every damn thing, but survival was the most important goal right now. "We consolidate resources," Linnea said pointedly, flicking her eyes towards Scathkick, who was currently blowing bubbles in the shallow basin. "That starts with intel. I'm still pretty fuzzy on the whole last, 5,000 years. We were waiting for you to wake up to fill the professor over there in on recent events." "How recent are we talking?" I asked, looking around at the space. If this place was dug out by hand, it would have taken years. "Hey, Professor Scathkick?" she called out, interrupting his little bubble bath. "What's the latest thing that happened that you remember?"
"Ah!"
He scuttled in his pond, the scum stirring at his legs.
"A new species was found, but it turned out to be very aggressive."
The look on his face told me that he was casting his mind about as far back as he could.
"We didn't have a name for them, but they were awful spooky. Anyway, several expeditions were sent out to former human settlements looking for weapons technology."
He raised his claws to indicate the surroundings.
My team and I got deployed here.
The start of the war? Scathkick had been here since the start of the war? How long's that been? Lanaya asked, bumping me with her elbow, saying how shocked I looked. 40 years, I spluttered. This professor must have been a fresh graduate from the Xenoanthropology Collegiate when the Coalition sent him here.
Really?
Scathik asked, confused.
Feels like it was just yesterday that our ship crashed here.
He sounded almost wistful, as though being trapped on a desert planet for the past 4 decades was a fond memory. Why haven't you contacted the Coalition, called for help? I asked, incredulous that they had been abandoned.
The solar flares, of course.
He said that like it was a stupid question to ask. Turns out, Linnea chimed in, seeing my frustration rising. The sun here has some very active solar flare cycles. Nothing more complicated than a toaster will work on this planet for more than a day.
That's why I asked the great and powerful Linnea to pull up my rocks.
He pointed at the contraption Linnea tied off.
I use boulders and pulleys to power my equipment. The unbridled strength of a human can lift those stones far more efficiently than I ever could. Now my work can...
Prof, we'll get there. Linnea turned to me. Past 40 years. Go. She said to me, motioning at Scathkick. Right. I reordered my thoughts, grappling with the dread that I too may be stuck on this rock, would have to wait until later. Survival first. The war wasn't going well. Those expeditions worked pretty well. The ones sent to Earth, Venus, Mars, and Titan did, anyway. We were still losing. I remembered the propaganda. Each instance where the Coalition earned a slight victory gained a bit of momentum. It was played as some major step forward in the war. By the time most were done with their first molting, it was harder to believe an inconsequential defeat of Alfheim drones was some new benchmark moment. Reading between the lines became easier and easier. I wished it didn't. Then we found the humans, a few billion in their moon, hidden since their planet was destroyed. I saw Linnea flinch, the memory of her world being blown to a cracked and broken corpse still fresh for her. That was a few months ago. Ever since, we've made more progress, but not enough. That's what we're doing here. Linnea picked up. This offensive is a distraction. There's some secret mission going on to try to hobble the Alfheim homeworld. I don't know more than that. The higher-ups lied about some old super weapon they needed to secure here, something juicy enough to attract the Alfheim main fleet to a lifeless rock. She grimaced. I understood why being here would be upsetting. It was essentially a mass grave for someone of her people's early pioneers, unaware that the new sun would mean their end. I'm guessing the brass picked up this place on purpose. If those solar flares ring the Alfheim's bell more than ours, we may have an edge. It'd be nice, since their mothership is kind of kicking our ass in orbit right now. She waggled her radio to show how she knew the battle status. It would be too weak to send a signal to orbit, but until it got fried, we could at least know how the fight was going. We both let Scathkick absorb that information. He silently stared at us, digesting the gravity and dire nature of our news. I could only imagine what was happening behind his eye stalks.
Oh, that's it?
He asked, getting out of his pool again.
Well, my time was much more interesting.
He scuttled over to a shelf where dozens of notebooks were fastidiously placed. With practiced ease, he plucked one out, bound differently. It was thicker than others, with a spine broken by age and use.
This tome is what brought my expedition here. The last status telemetry sent from Proxima Centauri. Unearthed in a dig on Mars.
I watched as he opened the moldering pages, filled with text that I recognized as Coalition Common. I hate to call doubt, I mumbled. But I don't think the humans would send out their last message in a language they didn't know existed.
Oh, of course not.
He waved a lumpy, calloused claw to dismiss the idea.
The original text has long since degraded. The planet's salt flats ruined paper, and I've had to recreate it nearly a dozen times.
In the land where lightning falls, I read. The scrawl was messy and barely legible. Lo, did the beating heart of humanity endure. Death comes to embrace the seeds of our people, and to that failure we erect undying guardians, monuments of war to protect the peace. I looked at the mad crustacean.
A perfectly faithful recreation,
He assured. That, Linnea began, but thought better of criticizing the clearly fabricated document. That sure sounds like how us humans send status telemetry. Her face was making an expression, but I wasn't great at reading those. It looked like a smile, but really stressed. At a guess, she wasn't actually happy. Care to show us your excavation site, now that Dragith is awake? I leafed through the book as we walked through a cave dug into the back wall of the place I woke up. Well, Scathkick and I walked. Linnea had to pull herself along her belly. The sun cast us down for our hubris. I read aloud. In the interest of consolidating information, I was trying to figure out if there was some actual nugget of useful knowledge in the weird, prophetic drivel. From the lifeless bones of our garden chariots did we fashion the Jotun. That's probably the colonists scavenging the crashed seed ships, Linnea said with a grunt. Don't know what a Jotun is, though.
turn the page.
Scathkick said.
We all made notes.
This is sure to be enlightening. I mumbled, finding more scribbled nonsense. Professor Althkar believes the Jotun to be some kind of weapon. It was on his hypothesis that the mission was launched, so I had to give him credence. He's dead now, so it would seem my theory about Jotuns being a chrysalis for a god won out in the end. Who's a delusional child now?
Ha!
Scathkick laughed. I began debating tossing the dumb book.
Here we are,
He announced, coming into a more excavated cavern. The area was rough-hewn, wide, and tall with dozens of openings. Some let in light, others were made for more ropes and pulleys to make their way through. One of those ropes was hooked up around a very crude-looking drill that was, apparently, trying to get through a duplex steel door. It was not making much progress. The door was attached to a curved wall of metal, buried further in the salt and rock. A datapad of some kind still hummed with power beside the door, despite the technology destroying solar flares. Looks like a security panel, Linnea offered, able to stand in the much more accommodating space. Is that a heartbeat? She asked, looking at the screen displaying a line that jumped and spiked as it filtered across the display.
the beating heart of the Lancer.
Scathkick cried out.
If you listen close to the door, you can hear whispered wisdom.
He pressed his greasy carapace against the steel in a farce of an embrace.
Oh, go to page 83. Go on.
Against my better judgment, I did just that. The sun derides our faith in crystals and copper. Only the smothering blanket of flesh will see the Jotuns take breath. Our heart will pump its blood. Our mind will spark its ascendance. In the interest of reading something useful, I flipped pages until I found some more notes. Kratza, our technician, thinks the humans may have pivoted to biotechnology, since the solar flares destroy circuits. She's beautiful, but foolish. The door is made from metal, and it is this steel that skins the nascent god within.
I've been drilling into the metal shell for about a decade,
Scathkick said, priming the drill to start working against the steel again. It was lumpy and familiar. Did you make that drill from carapace? I asked, trying not to disgorge my rations.
Nothing goes to waste on Proxima Centauri,
He repeated, moving the drill to a tiny divot on the door and preparing one of the ropes to start the thing spinning. Before we waste that effort, Linnea said, coming up to the datapad. She typed at it for a moment or two, the keys crunching the grit that was caught in the buttons. After a bit of poking, a small hidden hatch cracked open, revealing an indent with a thin, short needle at its center. Password 1234. She mused, before sticking her thumb on the point with a hiss of discomfort. Human DNA confirmed. The pad crackled, its voice disjointed, as though 6 humans were taking turns saying each letter of the short statement. The door moved, scraping to a halt after only a hand's breadth opened. Linnea braced herself and forced it the rest of the way, washing us in a humid, musty air. I didn't get a chance to see what was inside. A beam of light shot through the room. It pierced through Linnea's torso, and she screamed, falling to the floor. The Alfheim floated down from one of the skylights, finger pointed at the writhing human. Its normally luminous form flickered, giving shuddering glances at the thing beneath the light. Gray flesh, skin wriggling, as though the muscle moved around the bones untethered. Lumps and bulbous protrusions roamed the almost human body. It fell the last few feet to the ground before stalking forward towards Linnea, ignoring me and Scathkick.
You die now, cousin,
it said with a too-wide mouth, overstuffed with undulating teeth. I watched, frozen, as it pointed. The beam of light failed to materialize, sputtering in pops and crackles of bright light. Bulbous red eyes widened in confusion. Then, Linnea's radio sparked a grisly electric death a moment later.
Solar flare!
Scathik said in a strange, sing-song voice, clicking his claws. The Alfheim turned to hiss at the geriatric crab, and Linnea took advantage. She kicked out a leg from under the monster. It toppled. Linnea quickly pulled a loop of rope over its head, around its skinny neck. I surged forward, surprised at my own willingness to move to action. My claw clamped down on a top braid, snipping it cleanly. Immediately, the Alfheim was yanked away, back down the narrow path out. On the way, the creature grabbed hold of Scathkick.
The door is open!
He laughed the entire way, his voice vanishing down the winding cave. I ran over to Linnea. Scathkick was dead, I was certain. Hopefully, the Alfheim too, but I didn't have time to contemplate that. The beam of light caught Linnea just below the ribs, hot enough to cauterize the wound. The small mercy only lessened the bleeding instead of stopping it, though. I pulled a can of biofoam from my emergency pack, showing it to Linnea. She turned pale, but nodded. I stuck the applicator into the wound. She screamed. "We need to find a med bay," I said after we'd cleaned everything up. "Best bet is in there." Linnea motioned down the open doorway, dimly lit with a dull red glow. "It's managed to maintain power even through fuck knows how many solar flares. Maybe it has some facilities inside this Jotun thing. Maybe sensors too, so we can see what's going on in orbit." Neither of us said anything about what the flare might have done to our ships in orbit. How many souls may be crashing down as we hobbled through the door. The claustrophobic walkway we found ourselves on was humid and smelled awful. The floor was metal plating, but the walls were strange, supple, flexible, and warm. It was like a membrane of dark leather. Our only illumination was a sporadic, strangled red glow from behind those walls. The hall split soon after entering, with no indication which way led where. I looked to Linnea for guidance, but she was sweating, breathing heavily, and leaning against the forgiving walls. We couldn't wait here too long, but getting lost on blind luck meant her death. I was about to suggest I go on alone when somebody spoke to us.
I don't recognize you two,
whispered a voice from inside my mind. Linnea heard it too, wincing, apparently hearing it much more clearly.
Are you from another seed ship?
No. Linnea coughed out, a bit of red dribbling down her lip. I'm from Earth.
You're from Earth?
The words picked up in pitch. A dozen voices seemed to clamor over each other in my head.
They finally come. Are we saved? No, don't get your hopes up. She seems hurt. What's that with her? Never mind. We're going home.
The words tumbled in a flurry like a crowd having an argument in a single breath. Linnea was clutching her head, bent over, nose dripping a steady stream of blood.
Quiet, everyone,
Came that first voice, calm, pushing back to the chattering mass. Linnea needs medical attention. I said into the air, hoping this thing would help.
Yes, I will guide all of you to me,
The voice said, and the dim glow coalesced into a figure. It was like a picture of a human was being projected on the other side of the wall. He stood tall, dressed in an archaic military spacesuit.
My name is Adolfo. Please, this way.
The projection walked down one of the hallways. We followed.
I have to apologize for everybody. It's been a long time since we heard news from Earth. How far you must have come by now. She must be beautiful.
What happened here? Linnea asked before I could bring up Earth's fate as a shattered corpse of a world. Your expeditions went completely dark. I learned about them in school. Her words were labored, and she had to work through a coughing fit afterwards.
Well, as I'm sure you know by now, the solar flares disabled our ships.
The projection faded, replaced with a picture of the planet of a dozen comets falling from the sky.
The place was supposed to be terraformed, but none of our technology functioned. We cannibalized what we could from the colony ships to try colonizing anyway. But a lot of us died in the attempt. It became pretty clear pretty fast that we would fail.
Images of wilting crops and dying humans dissolved into our guide once again.
So, we worked with what we had on a final project. The Autons. Every ounce of biomatter we could scrap together, our noble dead, the still living, everything, grown into a single life support system, housed and clad under the hull of our colony ship. Nothing goes to waste on Perma Centauri, after all.
Adolfo hummed as his image shrank on the wall, becoming an indistinct figure. Then, around the little palm-sized man, thousands of humans came together, melting into a beating heart. Bones, muscle, and sinew spread out until a powerfully built human stood, then knelt, encased in metal plates. That, in turn, began to get buried under millennia of sand and salt until a mountain was left over the construct. How? I asked, not even sure exactly what I was asking. Seed chips come with geneticists. A lot of them. Linnea answered, looking like she badly wanted to vomit, but just didn't have the energy. Until a colony can change the planet, the doctors change the colonists, so they need less air or food to survive in the extremes.
It took nearly 30 years,
confirmed our guide, coming back into view as we approached a door that I think was some kind of sphincter. It opened. Inside was a chamber that pulsed in a steady rhythmic thump that shook the air. In the center was a dark-skinned human, limbs sunk into the floor and walls, emaciated and ancient. His eyes were glassy and gray, framed by long, stringy white hair.
I know. I look better as a projection.
Adolfo choked out, his voice a dry, dusty rasp as he stared slightly ahead. Can you save her? I asked, the room largely empty save for another door and the bound human.
Yes, if she takes my place as the heart, the Jotun will save her,
he said. There was a tinge of eagerness in his voice.
I'm the pilot, you see, the one human who had to stay outside the collective to give the Jotun singular purpose of will. Oh, how I long to join with my family after all these years.
She'll be stuck there, won't she? I inferred, seeing how the man before us was just skin and bone.
Yes,
he said, solemn.
But she will command the Jotun. With its power, she could save her ship.
The room lit with projections showing the planet and the fleet above. Thousands of fighters drifted in high orbit, but the two flagships were falling. The human juggernaut and the Alfheim's Asgard-class cruiser, slowly coming to Proxima Centauri's unforgiving embrace.
This is the offer I make to both of you,
he said, just as the other door opened. The Alfheim limped in, supporting itself on Scathkick, scuttling alongside.
We have learned so much,
Scathkick said, clearly overjoyed, while the Alfheim hissed its displeasure at the general situation.
It's an offer I accept,
it rasped, voice hoarse and serpentine.
I will command the giant. Go join your family.
It sneered the last word, as though the idea sickened it.
No!
Linnea barked, blood and spittle flying at her outburst.
It would use you to kill other humans and the Coalition!
Why?
Adolfo asked.
You're both human.
That is not a fucking human,
Linnea said, her anger getting lost in another coughing fit.
My blood opened the door, cousin,
the Alfheim growled.
We are the future of humanity, and I claim this weapon as our birthright.
It started moving toward Adolfo, Scathik eagerly assisting.
Not so fast,
I said, rushing in to snap my claws at the Alfheim, putting myself between it and Adolfo. They retreated a step, the monster no longer powered by its suit, and Scathkick more insanity than battle prowess.
Human servant, let us pass,
Scathkick said, skittering back and forth.
We have the chance to see the birth of a god, humanity's future nestled into the seat of its past, the most amazing thing that Earth has yet given us.
Listen to me, you insane geriatric pile of calcified chitin,
I shouted, snapping my claws in anger.
That is the enemy. The thing that have eaten our people and destroyed Linnea's home world. You can't help.
I was cut off by a massive rumbling. The floor shook, casting all of us to the floor as a force entered our minds.
Her homeworld is gone?
Asked the cacophony.
Earth! Our home is gone?
The voices felt like they might rip my brain into pieces. I lay flat on the ground, covering my head with my claws, as though that could keep them out. Linnea's screams of pain echoed somewhere far off, as did the Alfheim's hisses. Out of the corner of my eye stalks, I saw Scathkick stab himself with his tail, taking the ultimate escape from the towering anguish.
Enough!
Adolfo's voice rang out like a thunderous bell that chased away the claws in my head.
Is it true?
He asked, calm, concerned worry in his words.
Is our home gone?
Those sightless eyes filled with tears.
Yes.
Linnea sobbed in answer. I felt them again, but subtler. The many souls in this place prodded at us. They were searching, as though the humans were looking for any sign of dishonesty, that this truth may be fragile and imperfect upon close inspection. They did not appear to find what they wanted. Tears streamed down Adolfo's face, and the great machine around us quaked in what I now knew was colossal grief. I felt it too, that sorrow, like an ice pick in my heart. The Alfheim beast, having never experienced true loss, cried tears of black ichor before falling to the ground in a shuddering heap. I think it eventually just expired under that weight. Linnea walked up to Adolfo, her own tears flowing freely as she stumbled her way to him. When she got to him, her arms wrapped around his shoulders in an embrace.
I'm so sorry,
she said, sorrow making her words thick. He stalled, feeling true human touch for the first time in millennia.
Thank you.
The room turned red, the projection of falling ships rearing up suddenly.
They've hit the atmosphere,
I said, looking up to the decrepit human.
Can you save them? Does Linnea have to take your place?
She does,
he confirmed.
I have stayed here too long. I've forgotten how to move. Will you do it?
Linnea nodded, never breaking the embrace as Adolfo began to sink further into the wall. The flesh of the giant subsumed him entirely and continued on my friend. I rushed over, my pincers grabbing onto her flight suit, desperate to pull her away. It was futile, as the fabric tore, and she was gone for a moment, only to return, just her head and torso revealed.
I can feel it! Ugh! Fuck!
She cursed. I could only imagine the sensation of her mind, her nerves being linked to the giant amalgam of her people, all of them thinking in the back of her head while their hearts pumped her blood.
Shut up! Yes, you! Get out of... No, fucking ass fuck son of a bitch! We don't have time for this! Traggeth, hold on!
The room shook again as Linnea roared. Her voice was drowned out by the sound of the mountain around us breaking away. A projection of the Jotun standing covered the wall of the chamber, towering over the landscape.
I can see them!
Linnea reported, looking at something I couldn't, her eyes now one with the creature she controlled. It ran, each land devouring stride reverberating through me like an earthquake in miniature. I actually lifted off the ground slightly every time she came to the peak of each running step. Her arms reached out, and I heard the moment the ship fell into them as Linnea grunted in effort and pain. The Jotun was massive, but the human flagship was still the size of its torso. The Alfheim ship fell in the distance, higher in the atmosphere. Linnea shuffled the human ship under one arm to raise her now free hand. I recognized the gesture she directed to the enemy vessel. So too did the Alfheim, as they managed to fire several shots at her, some of their systems functioning despite the solar flare.
Oh shit, I can do that?
She asked the collective, whispering in her ear.
Cool. Opening channel. Hey, to whoever's listening on the human flagship, this is the giant that just caught you guys. Want to target the Alfheim fuckers? I'm gonna give you a jump start.
She placed a massive hand on top of the hull, and amounts of bioelectric energy I could only guess at arced from her to the cradled vessel. Lights flickered to life in every window. Then, the weapons. What I could only describe as an attack from every weapon I have ever heard of was unleashed in a single volley. A nearly perfect circle vanished from the Alfheim ship as all the munitions struck at once before it erupted into fire. We took a moment to enjoy the view. Then, what's next? I asked, looking to Linnea. Can you get out now?
No. This is me now, bud.
She tried to keep the sadness from her voice, but I heard it there. But we'll get to do that when we do. First, let's make sure our friends here can get back into orbit to save the folks in those fighters. Then, well, I wouldn't mind planting my size 300 titanium-plated boot up the ass of some Alfheim fucks. After that, maybe we can get a lift from the Coalition? Her gaze came back down to me, her smile uncertain. She had no idea if this planet was now our prison, or whether or not the human or Coalition would bother to retrieve us. I didn't bring that up. Sounds good, I agreed instead, settling myself beside her within her pulsing, flesh-formed throne.